Episode 10 with Adrian.
We're immersed in this sea of toxicity. It's all around us, electromagnetic frequencies and radiation, that I think if people could see or hear what they were immersed in just on that one, I think they'd be appalled. So you can get EMF readers, if you will, that give you kind of a view and a sound of what's all around you. And it's absolutely shocking. The other one is you have toxicity in the water. Everyone thinks that, they're drinking clean tap water because it looks clear. And nothing really could be farther from the truth, unless you're lucky enough to maybe have your own borehole or there's a natural spring you can get water from nearby. Most of us are subjected to some pretty poor quality water. You can get a TDS meter and you can see what's in the water in terms of the number of total dissolved solids. But you've got, all sorts of noxious chemicals in there, chlorine, fluorides. You have birth control pills. In the cities, the water's recycled 6 or 7 times. You've got all the emotion that's, it's passed through people's bodies. There's all sorts going on. So like drinking distilled water is a good way around that. Food, ideally, you want to be growing your own food if you can. If you can't do that, maybe grow a community garden, get an allotment, do something so that you've got more control over the stuff that you're putting in. That will really give people a big kind of boost. And the other one is toxic relationships. And it's not just with other people. It's also relationships with yourself. You're nice to yourself. And you and I talked about that. Not to say you're not nice with yourself, but your way of dealing with not feeling good was to go out and hammer yourself in the gym. And that may not be the most appropriate way to do it. It might work, but for me, I'd be more inclined to be more gentle with myself and treat myself like a bit like a child and say, "Come on, let's go easy on yourself and let your body sort itself out."
Yeah, not really ever been very good at that, to be honest.
Well, I wasn't for such a long time, and I still struggle with that. But I do try and remind myself of that and say, come on, just lighten up on yourself a little bit, take it easy, and let your body sort itself out.
Yeah. Do you know, we've spoke a few times, and what I've definitely come to realize with you is you're somebody that you don't just talk it, like you genuinely live it, and you're, pretty serious about the things that you're talking about. So that's why I wanted to start with the whole toxic side, toxins in the environment, essentially. I was saying to you before, we've both spoken to Robert Jardine, and when you look into the German New Medicine side of things, and there's another guy that I looked into, Dr. John Sarno, he talks about TMS, tension myositis syndrome, and you start to realize about the emotional side of things as well, and stress, etc. But
it's huge.
I can't rule out the fact that we do live in a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And the way I always look at things is start with, what you're consuming the most, which would be air. Yeah. That's number one, as you were just alluding to with water. So distill your water, and then start looking at your food and other factors in your environment. So, yeah, did you want to? Yeah, you kind of just sort of flew out the gate there with some good information, but did you want to kind of carry on with that and maybe go into the emotional side of things as well?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's a funny thing when you talk about. I've lost my train of thought there. That's weird. We're talking about emotional toxicity, but just before that, I wanted to say something. I'll come back to it anyway. So, yeah, the emotional toxicity, I think, for me, I've got a lot of experience with that because I was a real big stress head. Not necessarily on the outside, because everyone thinks I'm really chilled and laid back, and I am these days. But for a long time, I used to get really wound up, frustrated, and just push and push and push and push, and stress is great and all the rest of it. And invariably, I was getting sick with it, because you can't keep stressing the machine for such a long time before the machine starts to break down. It's not built to survive at that level, and it's not built to have that level of all the stress hormones in your body. It doesn't do you any good whatsoever. So, the ability to relax, but also the emotional stuff. I think we carry so much baggage that we pick up during our lives, and it's more apparent, I think, with men that we tend to bottle things up. We don't talk about stuff with each other. We retreat to our cave and we do whatever we're going to do, and we don't really process it properly. And if you look at the German New Medicine, then there's a big component to illness, which is to do with unresolved emotional trauma. And I've got experience of that in the last year, where I've been doing a lot of work on myself in that area. And there have been some physical things which you and I have talked about, and I'll be making a video about, particularly to do with my left eye, that, it's been really remarkable what's gone on as you start to deal with that stuff and you start to bring it to the fore, then your body can cleanse itself. And you know, for me, it was a big emotional release, but it was a big toxic dump at the same time. And it had some pretty serious physical consequences for me, but it was worth doing. And I wouldn't go back and undo anything I've done, because it's better to let it run its course, and then you're clear from it. If you try and suppress it, you know, with any kind of pharmaceutical or medical treatment, in my view, then you're just asking for trouble down the track, because you're not allowing your body to resolve itself properly, and you should do that. You know, that's where I come from with all of that.
Yeah, I think going even deeper than that really is when you do have any kind of health issue, it's your body's sort of trying to teach you that something is out of balance, and there's always a lesson there, or even sort of further than that, there's a journey to go through. And I've noticed with a few things I've had, you could just take medication, you could just go back, you could just go down that route, but I think it's there's a lot of growth on the other end of actually, you know, kind of digging through it, and it helps you.
You know, I think the challenge with medication is that, and I don't, you know, you're not, no one's short of they're not pharmaceutically deficient in anything, but you might be deficient in nutrition. You might be, you know, too much toxins, you might have too much stress, you might have some kind of physical, you know, like an impact damage or something, or a broken bone. And those are pretty much it in terms of how you can get sick. So if you take something to make yourself feel better, to ease the symptom, you haven't dealt with the cause. And so because the cause hasn't been dealt with, at some point it will come back, and it's likely to come back in a more unpleasant way. You know, not only because the toxins are coming out, but because you haven't grown, you haven't learned the lesson that, you know, the particular situation was there to deliver. And my view is it's like a messenger come knocking at your door and you ignore it. So he knocks harder and you ignore it. So he kicks the door and you ignore it. So he punches you in the head and says, "Oi, I've got this for you." He won't go away until you get the message. So I'd rather get the message early now. You know, the first sign that I think something doesn't feel quite right, I'm out of harmony, I'm out of balance, I would rather take the time then to say, right, let's pay attention to what's going on and let's resolve this. Let's deal with the cause, and then the effect can naturally go away.
Yeah. What is it that kind of got you into thinking this way?
That's a good question. You said you were good with questions. Up until my early 20s, really, I wanted to, you know, get on with my life, pop a pill, feel better, and crack on with it. And I really had a lot of faith that everything was all sorted in that area. And then my mum got sick with brain tumors over a period of 10 years. And I watched the medical pharmaceutical industry do their worst, really. And, you know, as much as she died from cancer, I think she probably died more from the treatment. And that really was the start for me to start paying attention. I'd already, you know, changed my diet radically, and I was looking at that and I felt better for it. And so I was starting to look more at that. So I paid a lot more attention to my own health, and I started making notes. As you know, if you watched any of my videos about mind maps where I talk about that. So I mind mapped everything, and then people around me started asking questions. And my partner, my girlfriend, she developed breast cancer. So at that point, I basically stopped everything and said, right, you know, I'm not prepared to lose someone else I'm close to and watch this happen again, because I don't want to go through it. And I don't want you to go through it, because you've got children, etc. So I did the research and worked out what it was, what was behind it, what to do about it. And she's fine now. And that was nearly 10 years ago. As a consequence of doing that, people around me were starting to ask questions about, well, how do you do this? What do I do here? And it was interesting too, because as I was doing the research on that, I'd come across stuff like on, say, arthritis, which is borax is a really good one for that, and the magnesium. So I was just passing information to people. And I ended up writing a book about it, because I was capturing all this information, thinking, where do I put it? So the book for me was written down as my notes to myself, lest I forget in the future what I've learned on the journey. And so I share that with people, and you know, it's updated all the time as I come across new stuff. I think last year we did about 22 updates on it. And sometimes I have to do a backpedal on things as I learn new stuff, because, you know, it's hard to get to the truth these days. It really is. So you do the best you can. So that's a very long answer to how I got started in all this.
Did your partner take any medication, or was
she
it?
Did, yeah. She took some to start with, and she stopped after that.
Yeah, because I know some people go down the conventional route, but they'll aid the process. You know, Dr. Volmer talks about, you know, if you're going to do chemo, for instance, take DMSO as well.
That's right. Yeah.
And sort of try to probiotics and attempt to kind of help aid your body through that process, because it is a lot of toxic exposure, and it is
it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I couldn't work out how you're supposed to poison yourself back to health.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be corrected, but I haven't found any examples where that works very well.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it just takes pointing things out in such a basic, simple way to make you question things. So if you had some sort of a health issue, you've mentioned that you had a situation with your eye, you're going to do a video on that, so we won't go too much into that. But what's the sort of first thing that you do? I'm guessing you don't panic anymore like maybe you used to, but do you sort of look into the emotional side first, or do you start with, am I deficient? Have I been eating well? What's the kind of thing that goes on?
I look at it all. I look at it all because, I mean, there's a whole series of questions I would ask is there something missing in my diet?
Yeah.
And that's possible. Is there something on a toxic level that maybe I've started to add to my diet, or I've been exposed to as I travel around, or I'm eating, or is my food source from somewhere differently? Or, so I start to ask those questions to, look at the toxicity. Is it possible that some additional electronic frequency equipment, radio masts and stuff like that have been placed nearby? Is that affecting me? I start to look at the emotional side. Have I been exposed to emotional stuff recently? Am I dealing with stuff properly? Is this now something from my childhood? Maybe I've buried something I'd forgotten about that's now decided that now's a really good time that you want to deal with this.
Yeah.
So I look at as many things as I can. Am I doing enough exercise? Am I doing enough proper breathing? Are my meditations at a kind of level I'm comfortable with? Am I arguing with someone I shouldn't be arguing with? So I pay attention to everything.
Yeah.
To try to establish where the imbalance or the toxicity is coming from. And it may be as well that as I go further down this journey, as I get, I keep trying to get better. So what I try and do is say, look, the best I can do today is the worst I ever want to be. So I'm raising the baseline a little bit all the time. So it could be that your body's saying, right, you're in this position now. Now's a really good time for us to dump all this shit out. So I could be releasing old stuff that, could have been stored up from years ago when, as I was growing up, my mum would give me all sorts of pills and potions and injections and everything, doing what she thought was right to keep me healthy. And, as I've effectively reversed that and said, look, I'm trying to live better now. So things come out.
Yeah.
So, a flu process, which is an emergency detoxification, if that happens, it might go on longer and longer and longer, depending on what's coming out. And you and I talked about some of the weird experiences I've had in the last 2 or 3 years. Where my normal detox would be anywhere from half a day to a few days. It went on for like 18, 19 days, and all sorts went on. But I didn't fight with that. I don't take anything other than lots of vitamin C, lots of fresh air, lots of fresh water, lots of rest. I try and laugh a lot. I watch comedies, I read funny things, I go and chat with my mates. I do anything I can to put myself in the place where my body can do what it knows how to do naturally. I mean, after all, it grew me and it grew you from the sperm and an egg forming a zygote. You grew from that. So if it knows how to do that, it probably knows how to sort some of the other shit I may have done to it accidentally as I've been living my life.
Yeah. And looking into this sort of psychological stuff, because I always ignored that. I just pushed myself to the brink, and I was too worried about the physical world, what I'm putting in my body, what I'm doing, the environment I'm in. And I didn't realize that the way you think about things is potentially the most important thing.
Oh yeah.
And since looking into this German new medicine stuff, I mean, I had that call with Robert Jardine, and I've spent a month, I've just come to the end of it, probably going through some sort of a healing crisis.
Yeah.
I've been detoxing from all places.
All orifices.
I'm at the end of it now, and I feel good. But what I thought was really weird is it seems to happen when you're most relaxed. So it's almost like your body's like, right, we're chilled now. Yeah. The danger's over. Yeah. Now we're going to cane him, and now we're going to.
well, here's an interesting thing, isn't it? And I think that being relaxed should be a more natural thing for us. And I think if we were in a more, kind of relaxed, easy environment where there was plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of whatever we needed, like money or anything, you'd be more relaxed. So your body can naturally do more of the detoxification and all the rest of it, but we tend to spend a lot of time in a heightened sense of awareness because we're in fight or flight mode almost all the time because of the way, the place we live is structured. And I think that has an impact on us too. So things build up and build up and build up until it's like emergency release time, and then the floodgates open. And it's not when the stuff's stored away in the fat and the bones and all the rest of it. It's when it gets released, so you're going to eject it from your system, that you feel crap. That's the end of the process. It's not the start. I think people get wrapped up in thinking it's the end. Sorry, it's the start. It's not. It's the very finish bit.
Yeah. So that's what they start panicking.
Yeah.
Start to add more poison in, trying to suppress the end stage of.
Yeah. And if your body can't get it out the way it's trying to get it out, I mean, you only take it in through your skin. Through drinking it, through breathing it, through eating it, through lungs, etc. And you only put it out the same way.
Yeah.
So you're going to vomit, you're going to sweat, you're going to get the runs, you're going to cough. It's got to come out.
Yeah.
So you suppress that, it's going to try and come out somewhere else, or it's going to get stored somewhere it shouldn't be.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. You talk a lot about magnesium.
Yes.
And I think with magnesium, is it 12 detox pathways in the liver, and every single one needs magnesium?
I don't know. It's in thousands of reactions in your body. If you go short of it, some of those reactions have to shut down.
Yeah, and it helps you to relax psychologically. It helps.
Yeah.
Like you, when I started taking magnesium, it changed everything for me.
Yeah.
I'm quite a stressful person in general, and man, I sleep so well. It's incredible. And I use it, and I notice as well that when I'm more stressed, or if I do feel a bit unwell, when I put the magnesium oil on, it starts to sting again.
Yeah.
So it's almost like telling me, right, you need more. It's weird, because when I'm feeling good and I'm relaxed, I put it on and I don't feel anything.
But when put a few drops of DMSO in the magnesium oil before, in the bottle, and that'll make it easier to absorb. You'll absorb more.
Yeah, I was doing that for a while as well, actually.
Yeah.
Really good. But magnesium's been absolutely massive for me for all of the reasons that you've said. Helps you with your detox, helps you to relax, helps you with another thing that I've been looking into, the calcium channel.
That's right.
So, like we're looking at EMFs and they say, it doesn't penetrate the skin. But when you start,
they could say what they want, they're lying.
When you start looking into the calcium channel and the fact that it essentially pulls calcium out of the bones, you end up with free calcium, which can lead to all sorts of horrors. Magnesium's great, same as K2 and others, just sort of putting it back in and getting things working the right way as well.
Yeah. It's all about creating balance and harmony.
Yeah.
You get out of whack, your body has to do what it needs to do to rebalance itself. So, your job, my job, is to figure it out, learn the lesson, and then, try and do the right thing to put the balance back together again, and just keep addressing that.
Yeah. No, definitely. You're, I think, very intuitive as well. Yeah. So I think that's something that over the last probably year or two, it's something I've been working on myself. I was always looking for validation outside. I was always, kind of following other people's research. And it's only the last, like I say, couple of years where I've actually been starting to take a step back and, like I say, relaxing and looking at things play out in front of my eyes, which is a whole new level. You're not just reading it somewhere, you're actually experiencing it. What can you sort of say on intuition? Because whenever I've spoken to you, you're always like, right, calm down, chill out, listen to the signs, so it's something that I can tell you've been into for a very long time.
Well, I think I learned long ago that the answers I was seeking aren't outside, they're inside. And I'm lucky because I've meditated every day for 50 years now, which has been remarkable for me. It really changes everything, because in that quiet, and all the meditation for me is it's getting somewhere quiet to shut all the mind chatter down. Whether I have to concentrate on my own breathing or the background, maybe I can hear the water running through the heating pipes in the house, that kind of in the background, or I just play some white noise, anything just so I can concentrate on something else for a little time. And that really seems to help, because I think that you're looking at you're looking at the world through your eyes, but I think the real answers come from somewhere else. They come from inside you, be it your subconscious or whatever it's going to be. And that's where the intuitive stuff comes. You kind of figure stuff out. You get ideas pop in your head, again, however they might happen. That when I'm being quiet, when I'm out in nature or whatever, or working on one of the cars, if I'm really concentrating on something, then my mind's free and the ideas start to pop in. So when I'm talking to you, because I'm concentrating on you, some ideas, try this, breathe, do this, look at that, take it easy. Those are the things I'd be saying to myself if I was you. So I'm trying to look out through your eyes to figure out what's going on inside you.
Yeah.
But invariably, you're better at figuring yourself out than anybody else can be. Like everyone says, oh, he's such and such a healer. No, you heal yourself.
Yeah.
But it's when you're willing to give yourself permission to heal, that's when that happens.
Yeah. I think with meditation, obviously you've got the kind of mindfulness, and when you relax, things pop up that can be quite interesting. But also I think sometimes...
And by the way, just to interject there, if people haven't experienced meditation, if you've ever had the answer to a question pop into your mind, like when you're in the shower or in the bath or you're out walking or at a completely random time, it's because you're not chasing it anymore. Because I've learned one thing, that whatever I think I'm trying to chase, it's always got longer legs and it can run faster than I can chase it. So it's that relaxed moment where things do pop in. So I'm sorry for interrupting you there.
No, you're completely right. It's like a wet bar of soap. The more you try to, But I think there's something as well in when you're in that space. Sometimes the craziest things pop into your mind, and what I tried to do is I tried to almost lean into the feeling of those things. So naturally, I think we live in quite a negative world, and I think naturally negative things pop up. And what I try to do is just really kind of look at that and go, why does it make me feel that way? And what's this feeling I'm feeling now? Oh, I'm anxious. Why am I anxious? Sort of like, I think there's a lot of growth in sort of digging into that as well. And you start to realize that when you shed light on things, it's never really as scary as you think it may be.
No, I think you're right there. We're always frightened of what we don't understand. So one of the things I'm always trying to do is figure out more of what's going on, how things are happening, so that I feel more comfortable with them.
Yeah. Okay. What health things are you looking into at the minute? You mentioned about obviously doing some other work. Is there any kind of health topics or vitamins or minerals or?
Well, I don't really take a lot of stuff. I try and get everything I can from the food. I do take marine collagen. I find that's helped with some kind of aches and pains in the joints that wasn't being addressed by anything else. And I take vitamin C, but normally I just have like more and more fresh fruit and like citrus fruit, particularly in the winter. I think mineral wise, I found Clive de Carle's, what is it now? I can't remember. It's in a yellow tube anyway. It's something minerals. I forget now what they are, but they're from the soil. How's that for a really good description? I don't even know what I'm talking about. I went on a retreat in the summer to do with, it's called Pai de Lajin, which is a Chinese, kind of traditional Chinese thing of slapping and stretching. And I found that to be really, really incredibly for releasing stuff and also making me realize just how stiff my body was getting as I was getting older. So I tend to do that 3, sometimes 4 times a week. And it's something I'm looking at getting much more involved with. The guy that, invited me along to put the whole thing on, I've asked him if I could be involved at a deeper level with promoting that and maybe some of the training too. I find that one of the ones that really interests me a lot is the frequency stuff. Like, you've probably heard of the Rife machines and Spooky 2 and all the rest of it. I wear one all the time, and that's been fundamental in helping my eye, I'm sure. It's really interesting. Yeah. So those are the things really that I'm focused on right now. On the emotional side, there's a really amazing woman that I met on that retreat called Inga, who lives in Belgium, and she did some emotional reset work with me, which was incredible. It got straight to the heart of an issue that I thought I dealt with by burying it many years ago. And we didn't deal with it that way. We brought it right out in the open and dealt with it. And it's been no trouble for me ever since then. But that was also right around the time my eye started. So possibly I wasn't seeing things the way I'm seeing them. That's what I started about.
Oh, Adrian, you've paused
there.
I lost about
yeah, you paused
5 seconds.
Am I back? Okay, well, we might get it back because we're recording. I'm recording the audio separately anyway, so I can give you that.
Ah, there you are. You're back.
Yeah. Okay. Was I talking about Inga?
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you said just as you started to work with her, the eye situation started.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. So what I was saying was could it be that because I wasn't using my eyes to see things as they were, that my vision needs, is changing? So it's a bit like if you don't use it, you lose it. So I had been pondering that at the same time, because those all went hand in hand. But yeah, it's an interesting time, certainly. I don't think I've ever done so much emotional work and, stuff working in that area, which really started out when I had my first conversation with Robert Jardine, and went on from there, because I thought I'm going to chase this down and see where it leads.
Yeah. It's almost sort of never ending. You figure one thing out, and then you realize, right, I could be better in this, and then that leads you to the next thing. And
well, it's funny, because I'm 59 now, according to the calendar of when I'm supposedly, my birthday, but that's an irrelevant day anyway, because I was created 9 months before that, but that's another long discussion. But, one thing I've learned is I actually know pretty much nothing about anything, but I keep chasing it down and looking at it. And I look at it with fresh eyes all the time. We had all that stuff with the pandemic. I made a decision then that everything I'd ever been taught was probably a lie, and it was probably some kind of control mechanism. So I need to now relearn everything from the ground up. And I've set about doing that. And that's led me down some very interesting paths that I probably would never have noticed if I hadn't taken a conscious decision to forget what I've been taught and to relearn everything from the ground up.
Yeah, so you're sort of coming at it from a no framework perspective, start again.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things I do, and it's an interesting thing to do, is trying to remember to look with fresh eyes at old situations. So if you can't, see, what do I see new? So I look at my partner with fresh eyes. I look at my daughters with fresh eyes. I try and have fresh eyes on a drive I might do repeatedly. So I notice new things, because invariably, we get kind of tunnel vision. I noticed I was doing as I was getting older, and you kind of know what's coming next. And it takes the juice out of stuff. Well, I want to rejuice everything. So what can I see here? What's different? What can I notice? Can I do something, completely back to front, like get dressed a different way, or, wash a different way, just so I get a different perspective on things all the time. And I found that's been very useful as well.
Yeah, you're throwing the algorithms off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I used to write a lot of code, so I'm familiar with what happens.
Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting, because essentially that's what it is all about, right? They're tracking we're so repetitive.
Yeah.
What we do, and you're just throwing the algorithm off there, and it's like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, I have a friend of mine. I don't see him much anymore because he's in a different area, but he was armed police, and he said, you're actually quite difficult because you are so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Because I just do things to change things up to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because I just want to know what's going to happen now if I do this.
No, I think there's definitely something in that, because like you say, life just blurs into one. And I think things like the whole COVID situation has sort of taught us that nothing is permanent, and we're only one, whether manufactured or not, crisis away from the world being upside down. So it's probably quite a good way to be, is to sort of put yourself outside that comfort zone all the time and retest things, and that way you're just constantly growing rather than just settling into this sort of comfort zone that we're always seeking.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that served me well as well is I have a deep distrust of the kind of whole system anyway. And doing research and looking back, which is what my more recent content's been about, where was this whole thing created, and how's it used to control us, and what can be done about it? And that's when you start to realize what a flimsy veil it is, and how flimsy the whole thing is. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty nasty and violent. They've got thugs called policemen, a lot of them, although there are some good ones. You've got armed forces. It's all to do with forces, isn't it? Police force, armed forces, and stuff like that. But as you start to become more familiar with who you are and how you fit in this whole game, and what's been created and handed to you that you then identify as, that's used to control you, when you start to work that out, you get a whole deeper level of freedom, because you don't work with the system the same way, because it's just an annoying, stupid thing anyway. It's only there to drain your energy.
Yeah. I mean, the whole system is built up on what? Faith, trust, I guess.
And deception.
Yeah, if we all decide that we don't really want to use this money anymore.
Yeah.
Then
don't want to play your game. It's your game. You go crack on. I'm playing a different one now.
Yeah. That's why I always think, like, the world can be changed in an instant.
Yes.
Through us and how we perceive things, like that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that everyone says, they want to change everyone. Well, my views changed so much in the last sort of 15, 20 years that the only one I need to change is me, because I'm the only one I can change anyway.
Yeah.
So, if I see something out here that's not right, that I don't resonate with, that I don't like, I'm only experiencing it because I'm allowing it to be based on what I'm focused on and where I'm, if you will, what frequency I am tuned to. A bit like a television, you're watching a horror film, you're hiding behind the bloody cushions, change the fucking channel.
Yeah.
So if I change the channel, I'm on different frequencies. I spend more and more time working on changing me so that I can have a much nicer experience, as I progress through my life. And I think that's an important thing, is to don't worry about changing everybody else. Just work on you.
Yeah.
Become a better you.
When I watch a horror movie, because I don't really get caught up in TV too much. And the reason is because I'm always aware that it's filmed in a studio.
Yeah.
So no matter how scary it is or how, violent it is, immediately, as soon as I just remind myself, it's in the studio. Yeah. The whole thing's gone.
You don't know NASA apparently has got the largest film studio in the world.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That makes perfect sense. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, Adrian. Not today.
No, we're not. We'll leave that one alone. But it's an important point you make, that, pretty much everything you're witnessing, everything is theater.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah. And if you give it the energy, then it holds that energy.
Yes.
They call it the loosh. I always refer to it the loosh energy, which is like your love energy, love and fear energy.
That's right. Yeah, they're very close.
Yeah. So if you're, say you're watching TV or you're at a gig, or, Glastonbury is like a giant occult ritual. There's nothing wrong with being there, but as long as you're aware that that's what it is, and you can preserve your own energy and you don't give your energy, then they don't have the power over you.
Wasn't there a film about that called Monsters, Inc.?
Exactly, yeah. There you go. And as long as you know that's what it's all about, then, you can preserve that. And but you mentioned in one of your interviews about Jason at Iconics. Is it, the guy who talks about the Phoenix? What's his bloody name? Archaics, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I've never spoken to him. I thought his work was interesting.
Yeah, he always talks about the almost sort of two realities. You've got the collective, and then you've got your individual. Yeah. And I think that realization for me has helped me a lot. During the whole sort of COVID situation, I got really caught in the play. I gave a lot of energy. I was worried about what was going to happen next, and it caused me a lot of issues. And now, there's always something. It's the Ukraine thing. It's the whatever the next thing is. And I sort of, like you were saying, I look at it as I can control this and how I perceive it, and this is my own reality, and what I believe essentially on a subconscious level is what this reality is reflecting back at me. And the whole collective thing, I'm not part of that anymore. I watch it, I observe it as theatre, but I continue in my little bubble. I can't change that. I can just change this, and hopefully people will see the work I'm doing, and that might inspire maybe, or raise questions, and we can open conversations about that. But
well, Wayne Dyer said something really interesting. One of his quotes was, "I don't get what I want, I get what I am."
Yeah.
You don't get what you want, you get what you are. So the more you can become what you want to be, the more you'll experience that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes on that deeper subconscious level. When you look into German New Medicine and the Dr. Sarno stuff, it's not always the conscious things that are going on. The trauma, the conscious trauma. I've got to pay the bills this month. I'm worried about this. Someone's just cut me up. It's normally that subconscious thing that you've buried deep down, that you're so used to hiding, and your body's actually helping you hide that, that psychological pain by causing symptoms and distracting you. And that's where the healing is just being able to tap into that. And that should be your job. Focus on that, not this, not the Ukraine, not this,
Focus on your shit. Yeah. Not someone else's.
Yeah. And that is the fear. Do you think that, like, when you look at the end game or the end times, and people talk about the reset, and they talk about the great reset and all this kind of stuff. I've started to believe, and looking into Gnosticism, I think as well, has kind of helped me with this belief system, is there is no end game. it's a perpetual cycle of tricking us into giving our energy and feeding the system. So it's never going to end in, real hardcore forced totalitarianism like the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
These things never last because eventually things have to balance out. It's the nature of our reality, and people will kick back in the end, and the many will overcome, the few that are oppressing us. And I think the actual real goal, not that there is an end goal, but the continuous goal is to convince you that you're free, but to kind of trap you in like a barless prison almost. So when I look at this Great Reset thing, and it is looking real, and I do fear it in some way, but I almost feel like, would that actually work? Because it's only a matter of time where I think humanity will always overcome, that kind of pressure.
Yeah, I think, I mean, freedom's an interesting thing. I don't think a lot of people spend a lot of time working out what it really means, and they think they have some measure of freedom because they might have a nice house, a nice car, and a reasonable job, and nice friends, nice clothes, be able to go on holiday, all the rest of it, but they're not free at all. So I think that's a particularly big discussion. But yeah, I think I don't really pay attention to what's going on. I just focus on the things I want to create, the things I want to do, because otherwise, we talked about what energy flows where attention goes, right? You get. I mean, I'm a bit concerned about saying, excuse me, that thoughts become things, because a lot of people think, well, I can just sit on the couch, eat a load of potato chips, and I'm going to get everything I want. And if you can do that, good luck to you. My experience has been somewhat different. I think about what I want, and then I get kind of ideas about the things I should do to take me in that direction. So I go do them, and I keep doing them. So I would, if you focus on what's coming and you put your attention on it, you're just feeding the beast anyway. Far better, I think, to say, look, I'm mindful that there's some pretty crazy shit coming down the road if I don't do something about it. So I'm going to do everything I can do about it. I'm going to talk to people I know. I'm going to make preparations myself for the kind of life that I want to have, so that if that comes, I can mitigate some of that. But I think you're right. It will balance itself out in the end. But I wouldn't sit back and be, a spectator. I would do everything I can think of doing that I felt inspired to do that made me feel more comfortable that whatever happens, I'm actually in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I think you used a good word there, inspired. I think inspiration is what we need, not fear.
Yeah.
And there's always something. They will always try to convince you that it's.
Oh, lost you there, mate.
Oh, am I back?
So I got you. They're always trying to convince you. Then it went awful quiet, which was convenient.
Yeah, I was just saying that they're always trying to convince you that it's, it's imminent and it's
and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, inevitable.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. So why bother? But then equally, you don't want to get too wrapped up in it, because then you're feeding, like you say, you're feeding the game. And sometimes, you don't just, again, using the kind of thoughts become things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't. You can create what you don't want as well as create what you do want.
I can give you a really good example of that from my own life. That some things happened to me back in 2001. My mum was dying, and then she did die. I got divorced, and there was an investigation into one of my companies, or two of my companies, by the police. It was a fraud investigation, went on for 2.5 years. I was never charged, but I was arrested like 16 times, and a whole bunch of other junk went on. And my whole world just kind of imploded in itself. And I started to say, right, this has happened. I best plan for this. And I'd make all these plans in case something else went wrong. And it did go wrong. And I was like, fucking hurrah. It's a good thing I had some, something ready for that. So let's plan in case things go worse. And I ended up driving myself in the ground like a big fucking screw, thinking I was doing the right thing by dodging it, by planning, because this might come now. So let's do this in case it comes. And all that attention and focus and the action I was taking inevitably would draw it to me. And it took me many years before I worked out what I was doing. So I'm very mindful now of when I start to pay attention to anything I don't want. But I just say to myself, look, if you don't want it, you need to turn your attention to something you do want. Otherwise, you will get the very thing that you're trying to dodge. And that's been very concrete in my life for a long time.
That's a massive penny drop moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's, because I've been looking at my life. I turned 35 this year. And I'm like, I've always had dreams, and I've always been ambitious, and it's sort of time, especially since the COVID thing, years have just melted into one.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm sort of taking stock of where I am, and I'm thinking, I'm not where I thought I'd be, and it's kind of just dawned on me. And I always, just like you said, I always have a plan B, or I'll do something, but then I'll plan, should that go wrong, then I've got this ready. And I've actually been thinking about this for a while. I'm so good at planning. My plans always are used. They're always utilized. And is it because I'm planning for the worst thing that happens, and I'm so clever that I can guess the worst thing that's going to happen, I'm already ready for it? Or am I actually just putting that out,
My view would be you're having a hand in its very creation because of the things you're focused on. Nothing else can come.
That is mental.
Been there, done that, pal.
That is actually, man, that's knocked me for six, that one, actually.
So here's a good question to ask yourself. Now I know that I don't want, what is it that I do want?
Yeah.
And then write down what you want, and more importantly, write down a whole bunch of reasons as to why you want it. Don't give any attention to the fact you haven't got it. Don't say, yeah, but I can't get that because I need this for that. Just say, no, this is what I want it for. This is why I want it, and this is why I'm going to have it. And just gently float with the idea. One of the things I say to myself a lot is, wouldn't it be great if? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if? And so that then just opens my mind up, because I don't think, wouldn't it be great if, I had 100 grand come in this year? So I'm not thinking, yeah, but I can't possibly do that because of this, and I'm committed over here and doing that. I just think, well, what would that enable me to do? And I just float with the idea. And in that place, interesting things start to happen.
Do you think that sometimes we're actually led by the fear of how far we can go?
I think that we're probably held back by that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So we hold ourselves back because we're scared of actually going to that place of the unknown, that level of growth.
That's right. Yeah. Maybe we're frightened of our own brightness.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. When you shine a bright light like that and you become all you can become, you automatically give permission to all those who know you and all those that look at you and think, fucking hell, look what he's just done. Maybe I could do that. It serves everyone when we become the things that we're capable of becoming. Yeah.
But we have these comfort zones, these subconscious self-sabotaging mechanisms that as soon as you start to actually get where I do it myself. I get to a level, I get good at things, and then I'll just sabotage it. And I just stay at that level, or I'll, come back, or I'll decide, maybe it's not for me now. And then I'll make a new goal list, and then I'll go and chase that next thing. And oh man, that's crazy. I didn't think there.
But this is why, I'd encourage people, go and have deep, meaningful conversations with people you know and people you don't really know, like you and I. We've chatted a few times, because in those conversations, amazing things can happen, realizations, serendipities, whatever you want to call them, and you suddenly go, shit, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, I got you on to talk about how toxic the environment is, and all of a sudden I've had a massive epiphany.
Yeah, but that's what we were talking about, because your internal environment was toxic to you.
Yeah.
Without you realizing it, because you thought, like I did at the time, because it's broadly similar, that you were doing the right thing to protect yourself and keep yourself out of harm's way by planning in case this happened. I've got this plan and this plan and this plan.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good just to have the plan A and just go for it.
Yeah, but again, I carry lots of tools and I carry spares on trips. So if anything goes wrong, I've got them. But I don't think it would be wonderful if I can use these spares. I've had spares I carried around for years that just in case it would be good to have. But that gives me a level of comfort, so I can then relax and enjoy myself, because I'm not fretting thinking, shit, if I just carried one of them. So I've had to kind of create this balance where it's important to me to have the ability to fix things, because I can do that. So one example, I went to see Nigel of Lawful Rebel at the weekend, and we had a really nice weekend together. And driving back in my motorhome on Sunday, the fuel filter decided to block itself up just 20 miles from home. Now, if I didn't have some tools in the back of the car and a couple of spare fuel filters with me, just in case, that would have been really irksome to be sat there so close to the goal of getting home. But as it was, it took me 20 minutes, half an hour in the pissing rain and getting sprayed by trucks and stuff driving past to get it all sorted, get them away again. Yeah. So for me, if you can, I don't want to stop planning in case things go wrong, because for me that would be a little churlish, but I don't spend my time thinking, yeah, but this could happen. I just say, look, all right, I've got some water, I've got some food, I've got a blanket, I've got a few first filters, I've got a spare belt for the engine or whatever. Whatever thing I'm doing, I've got spares. So I have spare computers in boxes in case anything goes wrong, so I can just pull them out and carry on working. Yeah. I have spare cars for the same thing. If one goes wrong, I just jump in one of the other cars, which over time I've been able to do because that's important to me. It doesn't mean I'm planning on the car going wrong. It just means, for me, I feel very relaxed now because I've got enough food around. I've got plenty of water. There's cash. Anything I need, I've got around me, so I can be much more relaxed in my life. Yeah. And that's come from focusing on, I want more of this. So I work towards getting that.
Yeah, I think that's more being responsible and, sort of planning ahead in the sense of knowing that these things are possible, but not fearing it, essentially.
That's right, yeah.
I think sort of what we were talking about before is like the bigger side of things and almost holding yourself back. Of course, sometimes mechanical or electrical faults happen and you don't want to, I've got friends that, and I know people over the years that just don't have any plan B, and that stresses me the hell out. Yeah. Just completely winging life, and you hear the stories. I was driving and the car broke down, and I don't have AA cover, and I left my wallet at home, and you're just like, oh my god, So I think there's an element of having that responsibility, but fearing. I think the fear is where the energy is, isn't it? Having that.
Yeah, I wouldn't really fear anything. Most things aren't life critical. I mean, some things are, but many things that people are frightened of are, but they're not. They're just an inconvenience as you go through. And I think it's important to be careful of the language that we use as we describe things, because it has an emotional impact on you. So if I said, yeah, such and such stabbed me in the back, that has a very specific feeling to me, and it's unpleasant. Whereas if I said, yeah, he said that, and I kind of wish they hadn't, it really mitigates the emotional effect it's having on my physicality. And if people think that, words in, situations don't have an effect on you, watch a horror film and get shit scared, or as you're driving along in your car and you see a blue and red flashing light and hear a siren behind you, you see if your heart rate doesn't move a little bit. Yeah. All sorts of things. It has a massive impact on you. So be aware of the language you use to describe your life and the situations in your life, and you can have an interesting impact on that as well.
Yeah. And again, going back to that sort of power thing, and when you look at how we started the conversation with toxicity, one thing I did when I started to realize where the issues are, things like heavy metals and black mold being a massive one, and what's in the water and the food and the glyphosates and things like this. I think sometimes when you start looking at that, it's incredibly overwhelming. You freeze, you panic, you're like, I might as well just live on an island somewhere. It's just, it's so disheartening. And then what I started to do, and I see a lot of people doing it as well, is they start to organize themselves around it. They start with the water, the air filter, whatever it may be. Then they go down each rabbit hole, and then they start to fear food. I'm still like it now. I'm very careful with what I eat. I try to eat organic. I eat as clean as I can. But what I've been doing over the last couple of years is when I do have a cheat meal or I eat something that's off, normally off the menu, I won't look at it with fear and guilt and shame. I'll eat it and I'll enjoy it and I move on and let go of it. And I often think, like, is it the food that's the worst thing, or is it how you feel about the food?
I think the second part is a very large component that goes largely ignored. I think that how you feel about what you're doing has maybe as big an impact as the thing you're actually doing. Like if you choose to drink alcohol or smoke tobacco or anything like that. I think the mindset you have going in and with the food plays a huge part. And I think it's a part that a lot of people don't really consider, but it does.
Yeah.
What would it do to your physicality if you were guilty the whole time? It's not going to make you feel great. It's going to poison you.
Yeah, exactly. My great granddaddy died in his 90s and he smoked a lot. And he always said, the day I quit is the day I die.
Yeah.
It's like, it is what I've been doing it for so long. It's part of my life, and it is You know, it is what it is. As soon as I start to accept that it's poison, and I decide to quit, you know, and he just lived on, you know, died at a ripe old age of 90, and it wasn't the smoking that got him in the end. So
it's an interesting thing. We say the ripe old age. I think people's expectations of age is so badly skewed. You know, why are we dying at such a young age? You know, shouldn't we be living hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of years? Shouldn't we have that if we were in a pristine environment? Isn't that possible? I think it is. You know, but we're conditioned that, you know, you get to 60, 70 years old and 80 years old and you should be frail and not doing stuff. And I was laughing with my nephew before because we're putting a light bar on his car, then we're doing work on my truck, and then I was doing some work on the motorhome. So I've crawled on the inside, stood on the countertop, climbed up for the roof. So I'm now 10.5 foot up in the air on the ice, laughing and joking with him, chucking stuff to me so I could work on the roof. And he said, "Are you ever going to grow up?" And I said, "No, I don't think there's a future in that." And yet at the same time, I've noticed that I do creak and I groan a bit in the morning, but I keep working on that because I think that I was watching a video the other day of some woman in her 90s doing proper gymnastics on the parallel bars and stuff, and she was good. And she was doing stuff now that I think if I tried, I'd probably end up in A&E.
Yeah.
You know, so but so that mindset that why aren't we living longer? We should be, and none of this decrepit ill nonsense. I know people who are over 100 years old that been drinking distilled water for 25 years and they're full of vibrancy and life because they're not full of poisons.
Yeah.
You know, they've got their own faculties. They live at home. They're not in a care home. It's really fascinating to watch that we have this expectation based on this poisoned environment we live in versus what could be possible if we just took some time and cleaned what we can up when we can.
Yeah. And again, not fearing it, you know, to the other extreme. There's something definitely around the retirement aspect as well. I think when you retire, when you label it as retirement, you give up on the job you've hated your whole life and now you're free. I think a lot of people do lose meaning in life. You know, they lose that. You don't see a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty, but I don't see a lot of sort of elderly people that have retired that are still learning and growing and seeking. They tend to sort of think, right, that's me now. And then, you know, a couple of years later, they've aged 15 years and you're like, geez, you know, and it seems to be a bit of a slide downhill from there as well. So,
but isn't that part of the training of this whole weird system we're in, as opposed to, you know, looking around at what is possible and saying, well, let's model that, let's do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, excuse me, we're taught that the elderly, you know, know fuck all about anything. We shouldn't listen to them because they're doddering, they're idiots.
Yeah.
And my view is if they've
maybe
been
programmed
70 years, they've probably got some wisdom to share.
Yeah. Maybe programmed, but not necessarily idiots.
Yeah.
So
some of them are though.
I mean, I think we saw a lot of that during the whole COVID situation. I went to a couple of the marches and I saw quite a lot of, I'd say, the elderly. You know, they knew they stood for not even their own freedom because they probably accepted that, you know, they're not fighting for themselves, they're fighting for the next generations. But I think a lot of the more indoctrinated people were almost willing to kind of throw their grandkids under the bus to protect them from a imaginary virus that still hasn't been proved to exist.
From the boogeyman.
So, but no, mate, I'm thinking of like 100 and other topics that we can go into, but I think we've done quite well here, to be honest.
Well, why don't we do this, right? Let's call this one to a close and let's do, you know, a regular chit chat whenever you think's appropriate. We'll grab a topic and tear into it if you want. I'd like that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, I think we've sort of stick to sort of one topic and going into the emotional side of things as well is because I was thinking as we were talking, what the hell am I going to name this? Because we could just go on into all different sort of rabbit holes. So I'm glad we've kind of kept it somewhat coherent. But no, a lot of wisdom. I've probably got to watch this back and have a little think about this because there's been a couple of.
What I found when I edit anything, that listening to or watching back is fascinating because I hear things and I think I must have been thinking about something else when that was said.
Yeah.
You know, it's really hard to be mindful because as you say something, I might be thinking about how I want to respond to it. And there are invariably things that get missed.
Yeah, definitely. What is it they say? 16 times you have to listen to something or read something to hear every word or to read every word.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time you are just kind of going into that autopilot, and
that's right.
Yeah, but no, you've dropped some, because not my last interview, the one before that was with a hypnotherapist, and we went really into the the kind of subconscious, and it's something I've been looking into a lot more. I've been looking into it for years, but recently I've really, like I say, been doing those meditations and really leaning into these feelings, and it's just interesting how it, the information can come back at you in random ways. Like, I didn't think this conversation would go there, but it kind of knocked me back a little bit, actually. So I'm a bit rattled.
It'll knock you forwards, mate, just because it's made you sit down a little bit and took your wind out your sails. It's a good thing.
Yeah, you've rattled me a bit.
I'm good at that.
But no, look, really appreciate you coming on. It's been as good as I thought it would be, and
I appreciate the invite. It's been a real pleasure. I've always enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, wicked, and we'll go again, definitely.
Yeah, and when you finish with this, chuck it across. I'd like to stick it on